Hey everyone, my name is Kayla, and this is Dark Tales from the Road. Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. I am so excited. I've been waiting to do this one. It's super scary. I definitely recommend the Ghost Adventure episode on this one, guys. You will love it. If you guys are new to the podcast, I always start with the history of the city and state where this took place before we jump into the subject, and I always end it with the spooky. So I just, like to have a well-rounded understanding of the area and the thing that we're discovering. That doesn't make sense. I'm so sorry. But I want to just jump into it to get it going. So today we are going to be going to the Stone Lion Inn in Guthrie, Oklahoma. This is a creepy house for so many different reasons. It's had a long history, and so has the city and the state that it resides in. So let's go ahead and get started with the history of Oklahoma. So it is one of the newer states in the Union. It is actually the 46th state, that was hard to say, to be admitted. So even though it's one of the newer ones, it actually has some of the oldest history records of human occupation in that area. So it was a huge area for early hunting and gathering people. They were known as the Clovis and Folsom cultures. This is about 9500 BCE. That's insane. So descendants of these groups were still living in the area, and then in the 15th century, these people were wiped away because epidemic diseases and violence was coming into play when European colonization started. So Oklahoma was a part of the Louisiana Purchase, and Oklahoma was very attractive to a lot of people because of its location. It is the perfect place for trade opportunities because of exactly where it is on the map, going from east to west and north to south, But there was such history and hostility between the Native Americans, between the Spanish, and it actually ended up labeling that area the treeless plains, and they were known as the Great American Desert. And so with all of that, the government then pushed for the removal of the Native Americans from the east, and they put them in Oklahoma. So 1828, the Congress actually reserved Oklahoma for Native Americans. And so there were all different types of culture in Oklahoma at this time. So some it was very peaceful. Some stayed where they were. They had agriculture going and actually became almost Europeanized. Like they would also own slaves, African slaves. But then others, Native American tribes, they were migratory. And so they moved about, but they were also very loyal to their land and to their families. And so they would do anything to protect that. So we head into the 19th century, and the government has relocated tons of Indian tribes. A lot came from the eastern part of the United States, and by 1900, over 30 Indian tribes were in this area. And Oklahoma was known as the Indian Territories for a very long time. But then the appeal came to ranchers. They were in Texas, and they started to move up into the area for new pasture lands. And so then eventually the government opened the land to settle on. They created this thing called, quote, land runs. And it was where settlers were allowed to cross the border at a particular hour to claim homesteads. So I never knew this, and I think it's a really cool fact. So if the settlers broke the law and crossed the border sooner than they were allowed to, they were called, quote, Sooners, which became the state's nickname. I had no idea. I know that they've always been known as Sooners, but I never understood where it came from. Just some odd name, But yeah, it was because when they were giving out homesteads to claim, they could only do it at certain points. And so if they broke the law and went too soon to claim their lot, they were called Sooners. Great, my mind is blown. So, like I said, Oklahoma became the 46th state, and this was in 1907. And at the same time, there were more and more Indian tribes being incorporated into that land. So, after being admitted to the Union, Oklahoma was a huge oil producer, and that is what sparked the state's economic growth, really taking advantage of that industry. Going back, the Native Americans are in this area. They actually used the oil for different medicinal purposes, and they knew about these deposits under the ground. And oil actually would ooze out of the ground to the surface and collect on the things that are around them, like the rocks and water, and it would seep into different locations to where plant growth was impossible. Like, it became uninhabitable. But then a lot of the early American explorers came in, found that the oil, the natural gas, and they came in to take advantage of it, but they didn't start to exploit Oklahoma's reserves until about the 1870s, and that's when the giant oil boom came into play in the early 20th century, and it actually would last until mid-century. In this area, we all know where Oklahoma is, there were huge problems with ethnic tensions between Oklahomans, who were of European descent and white, and other races. So you had the Black Africans, and there were also Native Americans and Hispanics in that area. That was in the very early parts of when it got its statehood, and it snowballed into a lot of violence. So lynchings, and there were death, and there was all of this information being put out against African Americans and the others that were convincing the people of who they were, what they came from, what they used to be, and really ethnic clashing. And a lot of this accumulated all the way into 1921, when there were race riots in Tulsa. And during the race riot, there were 35 city blocks in the African American community that were completely destroyed, and several hundred people were killed. It's awful. 1930s come, and 1920s, 1930s, we're in the Great Depression, and Oklahoma was hit with severe droughts and very high winds, just destroying farms. And this is what created the Dust Bowl during the Great Depression era. And just kind of finishing up here, some fun facts, interesting facts. They're not fun, but Oklahoma City, April 19th, 1995, was the bombing when a truck exploded and destroyed part of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in the downtown area. It killed 168 people and injured more than 500. And I'm pretty sure it was the one where there was like a daycare also that just got destroyed. Just terrible. So that is a very well-known thing in Oklahoma. In 1830, Congress passed the Indian Removal Act. It forced the eastern Indian tribes off their homesteads and into, quote, Indian territory. We did kind of cover this. That Indian territory is now the state of Oklahoma. So by 1840, nearly 100,000 Native Americans had been evicted, and close to 15,000 died of disease, exposure to the elements, or malnutrition, which is now known as the Trail of Tears. Ugh, it's That's a very good one to research. It's very sad, but it's a huge part of our history, you know. Moving on. In 1905, the Cherokee, Seminole, Creek, Choctaw, and Chickasaw, oh God, I'm sorry, nations, they were known as the five civilized tribes. They built a constitution for a separate Indian state, and they wanted to call it Sequoia. So a lot of people approved of this. They thought it was a great idea, but then Congress comes in and refuses to consider it, refuses to request statehood. And so then November 16th, 1907 is when the Indian Territories and Oklahoma Territories were combined to form the state of Oklahoma. So what's crazy is literally Oklahoma could have been an independent state for Native Americans to live. It would have been called Sequoia. Like, it's very interesting to see how this plan was in motion and it stopped. And then it's like, oh man, what if? What if that had actually happened, you know? There's a lot of good shows that kind of do that. Like if you've seen For All Mankind, it's the Russians landed on the moon first and what came from it. So it's kind of cool to see those differing perspectives. So a couple more here. During June 8th, 1974, Oklahoma City was actually struck by 5 different tornadoes. And there is a show, I don't know if it was called Tornado Chaser, but we used to be obsessed with it. And it did feature that day in Oklahoma City and how crazy it was. So they are known as Tornado Alley. They are the heart of Tornado Alley. And between 1890 and 2011, it was hit by a total of 147 tornadoes. Just insane. Oklahoma State Capitol building is actually built on top of an oil well. So it's directly beneath it. And it was called the Petunia Number 1. And so in 1941, they drilled through a flower bed to reach the oil, and it actually produced 1.5 million BBL, which is, I'm not even going to try, but I think it has to do with barrels. And that was over 43 years. So they were just mining in the flower bed for oil. I just thought that was interesting. So let's jump into Guthrie, guys. So Guthrie's in Logan County. It's right along Highway 77, about 32 miles north of Oklahoma City. In 1889, President Benjamin Harrison signed a proclamation opening the lands of the area in the Indian Territory, and that was in March. April is when he allowed non-Indian settlers to come in of the same year. Because of that, Guthrie and 2 other towns came about. And in 1889, during the land run, which we talked about, the Sooners, there were about 50,000 people that participated and were able to stake their claim on open prairie during the land run. The town's name comes from a man named John Guthrie. He is from Kansas, and after naming after him, a post office came about, also in 1889, and then the U.S. Land Office opened, and then the land run started. So because of the land run, it grew so fast. The first census that was ever taken in 1890 indicated that it had 5,333 residents. And that during that time, they had 8 newspapers, 9 churches, 11 schools, and then 10 years later, the population doubled to over 10,000. It was actually the state capital for a while, but only from 1907 to 1910. There was a huge rivalry between Guthrie and Oklahoma City for the capital, but June 11, 1910 is when most had voted to move the state capital to Oklahoma City. It was a huge center for trade, and it was a huge hub for the railroad also. In 1908, Guthrie had 39 factories, including a cotton mill, a cotton oil mill, a creamery, and a flour mill, and it had 8 wholesalers, 286 retailers, and 5 banks. That's huge. And even with all that, they were also huge in agriculture and industry. There's a stat, it says here Guthrie exported approximately 2,000 cars load of livestock, fruit, grain, and textiles in a year. That's crazy. So I did a very small portion on Guthrie. I know the history is much more than just that, but I kind of did just the overview. And sometimes I will do that with the history and with the state and the city. All right, we're heading to the Stone Lion Inn, and its history is long and dark, and there are many people who refuse to leave. This home was built by Mr. and Mrs. Houghton, and they had 12 children. 12 children. I have 2, and I want to pull my hair out. So just, that was the time, I guess, you know. So it was built in 1907 by Mr. F.E. Houghton for his family. It has an area about 8,000 square feet, and it has 4 floors. So when it was finally completed, it cost $11,900. And so in today's money, it's actually about $380,000. With today's economy, that's not very expensive. But at the time, it was actually the most expensive home in Guthrie, which is crazy. And then through the years, it became different things. So built in 1907, in the 1920s, it became a funeral home. And in 1986, it was purchased by a woman named Becky Luker, who renovated it and converted it into a bed and breakfast. So she is still the current owner. It's been very well preserved and has been restored, but she made sure to really preserve its history, and you can experience how they lived in this great mansion. And even with servants, she makes it really feel authentic. So upstairs, it has a ton of rooms, bedrooms, and a library and a parlor, a dining room, and a 200-year-old French kitchen. And it has been updated for modern amenities, and you can actually stay at this bed and breakfast. But there is a darkness to it because one of Houghton's children, her name was Augusta, she became ill and she died of whooping cough because her nurse gave her the wrong medicine. And then others I've heard that she gave her the wrong dosage based on how small she was, stuff like that. So in the end, the medicine was not administered correctly and she died of whooping cough. So like I said, Becky Luker, she purchased the home in 1986 and renovated it to its former glory. But she has said that the spirits who lived there are not pleased with the renovations. And she worked hard to really make it authentic, but she still can tell they're not happy with it. So with the renovations, they started hearing unexplained noises. Loud footsteps were reported from the back staircase, and a lot of the time in the very early hours of the morning, which is so creepy. So doors would open and close by themselves, and she would actually call the police very often because she thought there was someone in the house. She thought they were intruders, but then nothing came of it, and Becky really realized that her intruders were not human. They are spirits. They are ghosts. And she says the 3rd floor is said to be the hottest spot for ghost activity. Becky said that her son was very, very neat. And so every night he would put his toys away before going to bed. Every night, like clockwork, never faltered. But every time he would wake up in the morning, the toys would be scattered everywhere. And so they believe this is Augusta, Houghton's daughter, still haunting the place and, messing with him but wanting to play with the toys. And Her father, Effie Houghton, has also been seen many times throughout the house, and he has a tobacco pipe with him, and you will smell it. So guests there have witnessed a childlike figure actually tucking them into bed at night. Just nope, 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 I'm out. No. Oh, that's freaking freaky. And then they've gotten complaints about noisy children jumping down on the beds, even though there's no children staying at that time. They also find a wooden ball rolling around the floors, and you can hear it like echoing through the mansion as it's rolling around. So at nighttime, they can hear the sounds of someone walking around, especially upstairs and down the back staircase. And so with all these events going on, Becky is still struggling with a lot of things. And she actually met one of Effie Houghton's children to kind of help resolve things. So they told her that her sister Augusta had a chest on the third floor that she would put her toys in when she was younger. And then after her parents would fall asleep, she would also creep around the house, especially along the back staircase, playing late at night. So that kind of clears some things up. Augusta's just all over. There actually appears to be several ghosts in this mansion. Augusta is the most famous one, and she's seen the most often, and there are some that are rarely seen and mostly by staff members. But still, a childlike figure is the most prominent one, and this goes back to being tucked into bed because they'll feel a childlike figure tucking them into bed, but also like touching their faces to wake them up in the morning. And some have said that the child played on their bed while they were trying to sleep. And a lot of the full apparitions that they see of Augusta is she really manifests from footsteps up and down the back staircase. You can hear her giggling. And then again, the wooden ball just rolling everywhere. More reports of different voices, a woman laughing, and some people love it. People will flock to this place to stay there, but they've also had a ton of guests so frightened that they had to leave immediately. A lot of paranormal groups have come in to explore, and one that has come in, they're called the Oklahoma Paranormal Research Investigation Team. And one called Ghost Haunts of Oklahoma and Urban Legend Investigations. So they've gone in multiple times and they always come out with something, always evidence. And they've gotten EVPs of a young girl's voice as well as an older man. Their EMF meters just going off and going crazy in different places with no kind of source. And just cold spots everywhere, just constant cold spots. So even with all this haunted activity, the Stone Lion has become famous for something else. Becky hosts a murder mystery weekend, and I think it's like every weekend. So when guests come, they participate in a murder mystery style party, and just like what you think of, And there have been multiple reports by guests saying, asking about different people participating, and it ends up being an apparition. Period clothing, who are these people? And, employees have to say, they're ghosts. You're seeing ghosts. These people are not actors. They're not real. It sounds so scary, but really cool at the same time to be involved in that murder mystery, and then the normal going on of the building too. So there's another aspect to this house that is separate but is still affecting the house, and It is about a man named Elmer McCurdy. I could do another whole episode on this guy because his story is crazy. But it is his gravesite, which is right next to the Stone Lion Inn. So the murder mystery is actually built around Elmer and kind of his story. It's definitely changed over the years and a lot of it's not true, but it is kind of based around his story. And he's buried in the Guthrie Boot Hill Cemetery, which is right next to the inn. So this is kind of his story. And she claims it's a true story. There are parts that are not, but it'd be cool to experience anyways. I would totally do it. So the guests will actually go gather around Elmer's grave, and like he had just been buried, like they were relatives paying their last respects. It's very very creepy. And so then Becky will go on to explain how McCurdy is here and the legend behind him. So he's actually a Hollywood legend, and he was killed in a locomotive shootout in Oklahoma in 1911. So his body went unclaimed. No one came forward, and so the funeral director who took in his body actually preserved his body a different way than other bodies at that time, and he used an arsenic-based preservative and stored him at the funeral home. So he was like perfectly preserved. And he eventually got mistaken as and down the line, I'm going to tell you the whole story, but down the line, he got mistaken for a prop for a movie. And then he became a sideshow act, and then ended up in LA. And then he was filming, he was a part of the filming of $6 Million Man. And then they realized he was not a prop, but a very well preserved human body. And then he was finally laid to rest in 1977 in that cemetery. So here's kind of his short story. There's more to it, but you can definitely look him up. You can see pictures of him, and he's very, very well preserved. It's pretty crazy. But if I come back, I would totally do another episode on him. So he was pretty much mummified using this arsenic based preserve. He was completely and perfectly preserved how he was when he died, and they actually decided to use him as a display at the funeral home. So they would display him in the window with the caskets or whatever, and to gain marketing, and then throughout his death life, whatever, he actually started traveling with carnivals and sideshows. I should have looked more into this. I apologize. I didn't want to go just on this huge tangent about him, but he moved around a lot. He was, yeah. And so, and that was around the 1920s and all the way into the 1960s. So he was traded around a lot. A lot of different ownerships, a lot of different things that he was doing. And then his remains actually ended up at the Pike Amusement Zone in Long Beach, California. So they were actually filming the $6 Million Man, the TV show, and the film crew realized that he was not a prop. He was positively identified in 1976, and so when they were filming this, I'm just gonna quote this. Okay. So December 8th, 1970, quote, December 8th, 1976, the production crew of the television, The $6 Million Man, was filming scenes for the, quote, Carnival of Spies episode in Long Beach, California at the Pike. During the shoot, a prop man moved what was thought to be a wax mannequin that was hanging from a gallows when the mannequin's arm broke off and a human bone and muscle tissue were visible, end quote. So that's it. Literally, there's pictures of him hanging from the gallows at this amusement park in the film. Like, it's very crazy. But yeah, that's how they figured it out, is he was well preserved, but he was starting to break down at the same time. And so literally the arm falls off, and it's a real human arm, bone, muscle, like, I can't imagine. So they called the police to come get the corpse, and uh, the doctor did an autopsy, and he determined that the body was shot in the chest. He died of a gunshot wound to the chest, and that he was completely petrified. He was also covered in wax, so that's why they did think he was just a wax figure. And then he was covered with layers of phosphorus paint. He actually weighed 50 pounds and was 63 inches in height. So that's a big prop, and it's heavy. And you could even still see like hair visible on his back, and like the back of his head and his back, and but like his ears were missing, his toes and his fingers were also missing. So that's kind of the story about him. And then he was buried in Guthrie, and they actually poured concrete over it so that his body could not be stolen again. Poor guy. Oh my gosh. So his story is incorporated with the murder mystery and with the Stone Lion Inn, and you'll see more of that connection later. So if you're looking for a murder mystery weekend, it's very popular. You'd have to book in advance. It's open all the time. There's no like one good time to go. Maybe the summer might be hot. I don't know. But yeah, and so if you're looking for ghosts, if you're looking for Augusta, if you're looking for the Laughing Woman or Mr. Houghton or anything like that, the claims are immense, and everything that I went through said everyone came out with some sort of evidence. So if you're into like staying at places and investigating all that, do it. This one sounds insane. So this is an article from a Guthrie newspaper. I do have it cited. I'm going to just read it word for word, because it's the journalist and all that went around the house with Becky. And so Becky the owner, is explaining some different things, and they speak with other investigators. So you kind of get two experiences in one. So I'm going to quote this article just so I don't miss anything. All right, quote, "I like to say the house has issues because that is a multitude of things," says Becky Luker. "It's been a family home, a mortuary, and now it's an inn. The 110-year-old Stone Lion Inn in Guthrie, Oklahoma has a unique history. If you ask certain people, some guests have never checked out. One of my guests just the other day came out of this room and said, 'All night long I heard this music box,' said owner Becky. Quote, 'Where is the music box?' I said. 'I don't have a music box in this house.'" End quote. Becky said guests have told her they were woken up to a child patting, I have an accent now, patting their face, patting their face. That's just one example of decades of unexplained experiences. It all leaves Becky uneasy. She says, quote, "I don't like to come here by myself either. Why do you think I brought Grant?" End quote. And Grant is her son. She goes on to say when her son, Grant, was 14, the front door kept slamming shut. Grant said he kept opening it back up. He even put an old iron on the floor to prop it open. The iron was pushed out of the way and the door slammed shut still. He can't explain it to this day. And Grant says, quote, "I guess that was probably the moment for me when I was willing to say there was something in this house." Christy Clark and OKPRI were the first people to investigate the Stone Lion Inn. So I'm still in the article. She's just switching to another interview she did almost 18 years ago. Over the years, they've collected videos, pictures, and voices. Most of their findings happen on the second floor of the inn where the guests sleep. Quote, Christy says, quote, "To the spirits that are present here in the Stone Lion Inn, we're back again." So while she was speaking, their detectors went off. While our cameras were rolling, something unusual happened. Andreas DeBars, the man behind the camera, swings the camera over to an empty hallway. Christy says, quote, "Do you feel something behind you?" And Andreas says, quote, "It felt like someone comes up on you really fast and they're about to pull a prank on you." End quote. He said immediately he felt like someone was right behind him and extremely cold. On top of that, all the hairs on his arms stood up and he was covered in goosebumps. While they were going on, Christy said she saw an arm reaching out of the hallway. She said, quote, "You had someone standing in that door." And that she told Andreas that. Sudden temperature changes aren't the only thing we captured that night. OKPRI sent us several voice recordings that night. One of them was, quote, "Do you hear what they are saying?" A woman named Sarah, well known to Christy and her team, also made an appearance. "Sarah, good sister." Another voice whispered, "Liar," while we were chatting with everyone. One recording captured, "I'm scared." When they stopped filming, we were talking with the crew. Andreas saw something out of the corner of his eye. While everyone was in the main room, he saw a paper towel roll tossed in the kitchen. No one was in the room at the time. OKPRI captured that on a recorder and we could hear the paper towel hitting the countertop. Christy said, quote, "You couldn't pay me enough money to stay at the Stone Lion Inn by myself." So does the house have issues? Becky says, quote, "I think we'll find out. Maybe somebody will." End quote. Or what we just captured in the night of the full moon. Yes, that's when we scheduled our shoot, was creepy. Grant says, quote, "I will not come to this house by myself." End quote. So then the article ends. "You'll have to find out for yourself if you're willing to stay the night. Happy Halloween." Woo! So I have another, this is another story from another investigating team. And so I want to, sorry if I got that last one confused because it's like I'm quoting the article plus quoting the people who are talking in the article. So I quoted the whole article and then, oh gosh, I hope I did that right. I just am not like on my game today, so I apologize, guys. So this is a group that went filming with the TAPS team, and they did an investigation for the channel Sci-Fi and the show Ghost Hunters. I don't even know if there's a Sci-Fi channel anymore. If you guys have cable, let me know if there is, because we used to watch it constantly, like all the crazy Sharknado and giant shark versus megalodon or giant alligator or something. Oh my gosh, I love the Sci-Fi channel. So okay. So this was in February 2006. They were invited to come with them. And I did put the link for this article in the show notes. So this is with the same people that were in the previous article, the OKPRI. And so they started filming. It was over 2 days, and it was 13 hours of filming. They said they had a lot of fun, enjoyed their time, all that. So I'll again quote this word for word because how they said it's a lot better than me trying to paraphrase it. So again, it's cited in my show notes if you guys want to look further into it. So it starts out like this, quote, "TAPS was able to verify a true haunting taking place at this location. They were able to capture and record true paranormal evidence that also consisted of the claims of Becky and her guests. The show with OKPRI and TAPS was first aired on May 17th, 2006. Since the Stone Lion Inn was such a big place, we wanted to make sure that we investigated the location thoroughly. We decided to do a walk through of the inn to make sure that we knew all the areas of the location in order to set up equipment. It was still early in the evening, around 6:45 p.m. when we entered the third floor. The third floor is an open room with 4 platform alcoves that are on each of the 4 sides of the room, next to the windows. We were looking around and Christy happened to open one of the doors that led to a single bathroom. She assumed that some of the other members would want to take a look inside the bathroom, so she pushed the door too, but didn't close it. At this time, everyone else was on the other side of the room as they had not made their way around towards the door where the door was. Christy took 10 steps away from the door and stopped to look around. All of a sudden, we hear a door slam loudly. We all stopped talking and exploring the attic and said, "What was that?" Christy turned to look towards the door and saw that the bathroom door had slammed closed. Unfortunately, we didn't have the camcorder going, but we did have the audio recorder going and captured that audio. We tried to go back and recreate the door slamming, but were not able to. The door had to be physically pushed shut, so it wouldn't close like that on its own. We found this out when we tried to recreate it. Also on the second floor, when we were doing sweeps, one room which connects to a smaller nursery, we had set down our K11 meter on a trunk chest that was at the foot of the bed. It was about 30 seconds after the K11 was placed on the chest that it started activating. Christy immediately wanted to see if she could find a source for the EMF activation, so she tried to open the trunk, but it could not get it open because it was locked. Later on, reviewing the audio, Christy heard what sounded like a woman's voice saying, "It's locked," around the same time that she was trying to unlock the trunk. At one particular investigation at this location, we were upstairs on the top floor getting ready to start a sit-down. Since the client's claims were that the little ghost girl played up on the third floor, we decided to get a doll to set up a little experiment. Christy and another team member went downstairs to the second floor to get a doll out of one of the rooms. After they left the room with the doll and headed down the hallway to the third floor staircase, they heard loud footsteps behind them. They turned to look behind them but didn't see anyone. They feel like they were being followed. However, so they quickly made their way up to the stairs to join the rest of the team. Another strange incident that occurred was when our team was eating dinner in the dining room of the home. There was a replica Egyptian sarcophagus that was in the hallway. It faced forwards towards the front entrance. After a few minutes, we looked up to see the sarcophagus facing into the dining room as if it were looking at us. Every one of us were in the dining room and no one had gotten up to move the sarcophagus. It had simply moved on its own. We got up to move the sarcophagus back and noticed that it would be hard to move without making any noise. We recalled the event and knew that none of us had heard any sound when the sarcophagus moved. Another strange incident happened to one of our group members. She was up on the second floor and happened to be looking towards a room at the end of the hallway. The room had frosted glass windows and had been known to be an active room. Ashley happened to see a shadow that caught her eye. She described this shadow to be the size of a child, and it passed from one side of the frosted glass to the other side and then disappeared. Ashley went to go see if there was anyone in the room, but she found no one there. She didn't have a logical explanation for what she had just witnessed. Shadow phenomenon had been reported before by many people who have visited the Stone Lion Inn. Ashley and Gary had another strange experience in the building. We were conducting the sweep of the basement area. After we finished, we all started heading up to the servants' staircase to go up to the first floor. As Ashley was about 3/4 the way up the stairs, she felt a bucket hit her leg. So real quick, they had pictures on their website, and I will put them up on my Instagram, but when you're going up and down the stairs, there were like buckets on this ledge. So it wasn't weird that a bucket was there, if that makes sense. So I had to cut in for that. Sorry. So back into it. Gary was behind her and saw the bucket come off the wall and hit Ashley's leg. She had asked Ashley if she had accidentally bumped the bucket while going up the stairs. She said no, because she was holding on to the rail that was on the right side of the staircase, so she wasn't close to the left side of the wall. Another time, our team was on the first floor in the main living room, where we were conducting a sit-down. We heard footsteps in the entrance hallway, and then a female voice was heard saying, "Hey," very drawn out. Not every team member heard it, but those that did said it was very loud and clear. A couple of our team members got up to look in the entrance hallway and up the stairs, but nothing was seen. While our group was investigating the second floor, a few of us heard what sounded like a clinking sound coming from one of the rooms. We went into each of the rooms and began searching for the source of the sound. We found a metal-type bowl in one of the rooms, and after tapping and flicking it, we were able to recreate the sound. During the time that we were trying to figure out the source of the sound, Gary and Curtis heard one heavy boot step coming from the hallway area. At this same time, Gary and Curtis commented about how they had all their hairs standing up on edge. Despite looking for the source of the sound, our group could not find a logical explanation for it. The sound of footsteps being heard is one of the claims. Christy had a couple of unique experiences too while on the second floor. She was coming out of the red room and around the corner in the wedding suite when she saw a black silhouette of a woman sitting in the middle of the bed. There were outside lights shining into the room and through the window that the bed was sitting up against, so Christy could see the shadow well. The silhouette startled Christy as she did not expect to see the woman right as she walked into the room. We have captured several photos from this location that we believe are paranormal in nature. We did, however, come up with a very interesting photo that might possibly be a ghost of a Houghton child. We were down in the basement investigating. Christy felt like someone was watching her, so she started taking pictures of the area behind her. In one of the windows, there appears to be an image of a girl. Since judging photos of images taken in windows is a bit hard, our group couldn't really agree on this one or not, but take a look below and see what you think. And I will put this picture up on my Instagram. So I don't know what I see. I see something, but I'm not connecting it with a little girl. I don't know. I'm going to post these, so definitely take a look. And the last thing they said here was, in the past, our groups have witnessed a lot of other paranormal type activity. Over the past 10 years, we have seen, heard, and captured a lot of evidence to say this place is haunted. And they did list out a lot of their past recording evidence, but it's all the same that we've talked about, so I didn't list everything out. So yeah, I'm going to post all the pictures they had on their website because they're really cool. And I think they did a great job. So that, and it'll also show you inside the house, so you can kind of get a sense of it. But if you really want to see in the house, guys, you just gotta visit Zachy, baby. You know, of course he goes to this house. Ironically, I don't know if I am using that word correctly in this. There are places that I find that he does not go. So he hasn't been everywhere. But this was one of the places, and I did not choose it just because he went. I don't, if that makes sense, I don't try to choose based on if he went or not, but it does kind of help because you can see inside the building and, stuff like that. But, oh gosh, I'm so sorry. Anyways, Ghost Adventures went there, and it was an awesome episode. I highly recommend it. I was super freaked out, super scared. It was really good. Definitely go check it out. I watch mine on Discovery Plus. I don't know. Does Hulu have it? Let me know where you guys find your Ghost Adventures, because if I don't have to pay for multiple things, that'd be great. Anyways, so when they're there, of course, they do their initial interview, and they're with Becky, and Zach was kind of weird this whole episode. But he had said that Becky is known to practice witchcraft and rituals, so that may contribute to a lot of what's happening at the home also. She has the original balming table from the funeral home just sitting in the hallway as decoration, and you can see it. And so they start talking with this woman named Michelle. So she was a housekeeper there, and she used to sleep in the attic. So she's talking to Zach about this crazy dream that she had, and I didn't write down the details of it. Crap, oh my gosh. But she had a very bizarre, very crazy dream that she believes the people in the house or the house was manipulating. So she's heard a ton of voices, a ton of noises. She also feels people that lay next to her in bed, even though she knows the door is locked. It's routine for her. And she had actually had this dream One night when she felt like someone was laying next to her, door locked, and she said she finally fell asleep and then had this dream. She also thinks that maybe they put this dream in her head, again, kind of manipulated her. And in her dream, maybe I did describe it, she was in the basement with a bucket on the floor. And it's like, they attributed it to scrying. So if you don't know what scrying is, like she would look into the water. I don't know that much about scrying, but she would look into the water and see things in the water, I think, or ask questions. I don't know. So I'm sorry if I get that wrong, but that's what they believe she might have been doing in the dream. And Elmer McCurdy was trying to communicate with her. And so I guess I did put a small explanation on the dream. I'm sorry, I'm a mess today. But Michelle is very quiet, very sweet. She is very shy, and she's not a believer in ghosts, in the paranormal. So this was weird for her. It was crazy. So Zach asked Michelle if she would stay upstairs in the attic alone for 3 to 5 minutes and ask questions to see if someone wants to talk to her. So of course she's super apprehensive. Who wouldn't be? Because Zach was so weird. Like, he was in such a weird mood. To me, watching it, I was like, Zach, what? You're being weird. What are you doing? Like, you're weirder than your normal weird right now. But she eventually gave in, and you could tell how nervous she was. She felt kind of embarrassed, which, when you think about it, you're standing in this room being filmed with a recorder, and you're just supposed to ask random questions to nothing. Like, if you really think about it, I feel like I would be too. I'd be like, oh my God, what am I doing with myself? But she does it. She does a great job of it. So Zach's still weird, guys. So they go over an EVP. Michelle heard nothing. Didn't get any noises, responses, anything, but she got an EVP, and what it said was, you couldn't hear it on camera either. It was just on the EVP thing. It said, fuck him, fuck her. Weird. Okay. And so again, Zach is being super, super weird. Like, the way he's talking to her, I would feel like so defensive, because he's like asking her, he was like accusing her. Did you say that? Did you say those things? She's like, no. And it was very weird. Like, he kept asking, are you sure you didn't say those things? Are you sure? Did you say those to throw us off? Did you do this? And she was like, no. Like, it was very, very weird behavior for me. But she was definitely getting upset. She was distraught. And then Zach, like, switched on a dime. I was like, are you okay? I'm really sorry. That was very weird. Like, stuff like that. And so I'm like, what in God's name just happened? So, but it's very creepy too, because they did catch something on EVP, didn't hear it on the camera, didn't hear it out loud. And what does it mean? She kept asking about her dream. Why did you show me this dream? And that was the response to it. So Zach says, as he's continuing the tour and everything, that he's scared of the owner. He's scared of Becky. And at one point, Zach was like, I lost her. And then all of a sudden she's like, I'm up here. And she's at the top of the stairs. And he's like, I'm so freaked out right now. She just like teleported us. I think Zach was having a rough night. I don't know. But so they also dive into Elmer McCurdy's story. So they heard that there's a bunch of stories about his body. They believe that they covered it in concrete because Elmer was a vampire, of course. And so Zach wants to go to the gravesite. And so it's kind of funny because it is crazy windy, and they are in a tent, and it's just, the wind is out of control. And they're using infrared sound to move through the concrete to get to Elmer. And they said it's to create like an electromagnetic portal. So Aaron and Billy actually stay at the Stone Lion Inn. So they're set up there with equipment. They're communicating with Zach, and Zach and a bunch of others are at the graveyard. They are asking Elmer to travel to the Stone Lion Inn. He's, screaming, Elmer, take my energy, take from all this equipment, and travel to the Stone Lion Inn to talk to Aaron and Billy. So it was kind of weird, but at the same time, it was just so windy that I didn't, what else are you going to do when you have one night to do this? So it was a weird setup, but it worked, which is crazy. So Zach would ask a question, and Billy had this thing that he would type in the question, I think. He would type it in, he's saying it out loud, Zach's saying it out loud, and then it would answer. So they're asking a bunch of questions, they're getting no response. Zach asks, who were you shot by? And they get the response, hang. And so Billy says, hey, he was hung from the rafters during that show and his arm broke off. And then they got a yes. So they're thinking, did he think he was alive when he was hung? It's like it stayed with him. It was a very big deal to him. And maybe that's how he thinks he died. And so Zach said, who just answered that question? Trying to really say, Billy. But they get back homicide. And he was murdered. He was shot during the train thing. And so they believe that's how Elmer is talking to them, saying that it's him. So they ask, who comes here to talk to your spirit? And it comes back saying empath. So they believe that Becky comes and talks to him. And so they say, Elmer, what are you doing? And he says, phone. Which is pretty much what Billy's got in his hand. It looks like a phone that he's getting responses from. So then they said, Elmer, how'd you die? And he said, hang. So I think he really believes that he was still alive. He didn't talk about getting shot, but that hanging really stuck with his spirit. Crazy enough. Then they ask, are we getting this right? And he says, all. So, Elmer, I feel so sad. So now they're going to start the lockdown. Before it even starts, a door opens by itself. And this is caught on camera in an upstairs room. It just opens by itself. And the guys all go to the second floor because they heard that door. So what that's even creepier is, they're capturing it, plus they're hearing it. And so they're upstairs, they can't debunk it. They're walking around and they were like, okay, maybe we should split up. But then all of a sudden, just noises from behind a bed in a bedroom. So they're looking into that. We'll jump to Aaron goes into the attic. Billy's in the basement. And Zach is in that bedroom where they heard the noises. So they did decide to split up. So while Aaron's in the attic, this is what happens. He's just talking to the camera. And he jumps up, super scared. And he said he felt like something was putting something down his pants. Like he had a plumber's crack. And he's like, I didn't, I swear. But it was just like someone was behind him messing with him. Like that's that. He had a spirit box going, and he said, did you touch me a second ago? And it came back saying, the kid. So he said, are the kids playing and joking around? And then all of a sudden these kids' voices came through, like they're playing. And then he asks, why? And it says, ghost hunting. No joke. So weird. Like, I've watched almost every episode, I think, and you don't get that response very often. So it's like the kids were hanging out with them, playing with them, and ghost hunting with them, Woo! And then the spirit box decides to turn off and turn back on. And so, Aaron, dramatic, jumping up and down, freaking out. He's done. Billy was in the basement. He actually got nothing, interestingly enough. So Zach's in the bedroom asking questions, and he's there, just constant noises, thuds, and footsteps. And when he's laying in the bed, he hears a really loud noise. And it is scary in the moment when you're watching Zach and he jumps up. And one of the cameras in the hallway, the batteries were completely drained and it was knocked over. And so he starts investigating it. Aaron comes down, and what's funny is they actually thought each other were apparitions, Zach and Aaron. So it was kind of funny because they're like, oh my God, what did I just see? And it was each other. It was just kind of funny. But he's helping to investigate and debunk this camera. And so in the end, the camera had to have been pushed. Like, it was on a tripod, perfectly still. And they just tried to debunk this. Nothing came from it. So this was at 3 a.m, the witching hour. Ending the night, they are all at the nerve center. All the guys are. And they are just sitting there talking, and a door opens by itself, just right next to them. And it's freaky. They're not expecting it. They're just sitting there talking, not investigating. They do have cameras rolling, which is good, but then they're just sitting there, and they ask to close the door, and it slams shut. So they have cameras at the front and back door, and you can see it open and shut, all angles, nobody there. And so they have an EVP going. They ask, who are you? Did you slam the door? Spirit box, again, turns itself on by itself. And they said, why did you slam the door? And it came back and said, because I had to. So creepy. This was a really good episode. I was creeped out by it. I got chills. I think they did a great job. So yeah, I highly recommend that episode. And that's it for the Stone Lion Inn in Guthrie, Oklahoma, guys. Let's go do the murder mystery. And let's all sleep in one room so that we don't die or get scared or haunted, whatever. So yeah, I really enjoyed this subject. I hope that you guys did also. If you would like to follow me, I am on Facebook, Instagram, sorry about that. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. I also have a Patreon if you guys would like to support the show. And join me tomorrow for another new episode. It is a bonus episode about the zodiac. We're going to be going over Pisces. And then March 1st, our next full episode will be in Louisiana. And everyone knows how crazy Louisiana is. So this is a big one. Anyways, hope you have an amazing day. Thank you guys all for your support, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye.
Tired of the same old podcasts every week? When you're ready for something different, come give us a shot.
Greetings. We're Technically a Conversation, a podcast for curious people by curious people.
Every week, we take turns sharing a new topic, and the other host has no idea what the topic will be.
Our topics are all over the place, from light and funny to dark and sometimes spooky.
We've covered everything from true crime, historical events and people, pop culture icons, the supernatural and occult.
I like that.
And legends and folklore.
My favorite. We're like the Dollar Tree stuff you should know.
Except completely different. No matter what the topic is, we try to make the episodes funny.
Yeah, you may not want to advertise that. Our jokes aren't very good.
What are you talking about? My jokes are fantastic.
Hey, I get paid to laugh either way.
Wait, you get paid?
Check us out at technicallyaconversation.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Shout out to the 11.5 people that listen to us on Google Podcasts. Wait, you said you were getting paid?